It's my pleasure and honour to introduce our keynote, just to set the tone for the awards this morning, and to introduce Vaughan Gething, who's our Deputy Minister for Health, who's going to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for the kind words and the introduction. It is a real pleasure to be here today with you to start off the NHS Wales Awards. It's the first time that I've been lucky enough to be here, and I can honestly say that everyone in this room should be proud of why they're here, of what they've done up to now, and what you're still going to do with and for the people of Wales within the National Health Service. I do think when you look at the NHS in Wales, you look at the way the service is presented on a regular basis, it doesn't do justice and doesn't do credit to the regular day-in, day-out experience of patients, and it doesn't do justice to the quality, expertise and commitment of staff. So having a day where we get to celebrate and say thank you, I think is really important and frankly, certainly no more than you deserve. It's also an opportunity to recognise the fact that within Wales, there are a number of things that we do that are generally leading the way across the UK in the way we design and deliver healthcare. Innovation isn't an added extra. It's part of what we have to do to meet the challenges of today and in the future. And each of these awards will look at different ways that practice is changing and improving outcomes for the patient, improving the experience of the patient as well. So a good news story about a forward-looking organisation. So we also, I think, should take stock of the fact that despite the way that we are talked about in the press from time to time, when you ask people about their individual experience of the health service, the response is overwhelmingly positive. Over 9 out of 10 people are happy with the last episode in primary care and in secondary care. There are many businesses that don't get anywhere near having that level of customer satisfaction. So we should recognise this is a service that does a really good job the great majority of the time. That shouldn't take away from where we recognise there are challenges, where we recognise we need to do better, where we recognise we haven't done well enough. So it's the honesty of accepting where we don't get things right and doing something about them. But it's also about recognising that actually we get an awful lot of things right the great majority of the time. Now, some of today is just looking at what we already do well and how to do that better. And some of it also is about how we try and challenge and address some of the problems that we do face. I can honestly say I've had an opportunity to look around a number of the storyboards and the posters, and I'm very impressed with the breadth of experience and variety of different projects that we have here for the awards today. I understand there were more than 160 entries for the awards. And not just that, but there are now 24 finalists, so 3 in each category. So a significant number of projects that people put in, and a significant number of finalists as well. And that variety, I think, and the spread of the NHS is something that we don't always appreciate until you come to an event like this and appreciate the breadth and the spread and the quality and the reach of the health service with all of its partners. And of course, when we talk about partners, we're talking about the patient as the key partner. And again, we talk about think about the Prudent Healthcare Conference that some of you would have had the opportunity to be at last week, and how those principles in prudent healthcare are becoming more embedded in the service and are driving the way we do things, which is absolutely the way things should be. And yet we still need to have more of that conversation with the public to see how we get the patient to take a greater interest in their health outcomes and in how they work with the service to improve their own health. Now, that's not a conversation that is easy with every group of patients, but we know the prize in all of this is a more engaged patient, more likely to make effective choices and improve choices and outcomes for their patient care. And that in itself should be motivating for staff in the service too. So co-production isn't just a word for academics to talk about and people in the service. It is how we want to design the future of the health service. And the other part about the variety, of course, is one of the points that Tracy's made. The multi-agency approach. If you look at so many of the different nominations that are here, there's more than one organisation involved. So it's not just health and social care, not just the patient, but all the different parts of the voluntary sector and how they're involved and engaged in trying to improve healthcare. So the awards today give us a really good reason to be optimistic about the future of the health service. And I know I've been asked to give a plug here again about the Welsh Language Awards last week that the Minister attended and presented at. because so much of this is about how we deliver an appropriate service in different parts of the community, and where the language is an important part of delivering the service, and opportunities are provided for staff to either use the language or to gain further proficiency in it. So this is a country that has to be at ease with itself and the different communities we have and the different needs we have to manage and run an effective service. One of the things that I'm especially interested in taking from today's events is how it affects the future. So we have a day of celebration. We congratulate ourselves about all the things that we already do well, the excellence that exists, and we should absolutely do that. But of course, the next challenge is, how do we ensure that excellence that we recognise and lionize is not simply an island on its own, but how does that become a standard in practice? So not isolated, but standard. And so that's what I regularly say this to audiences, and so some people will probably be bored of hearing me give this message, but that's probably a good thing because it might mean that it's getting through. So I'll be interested in looking in 6 months' time, with each of the winners that we announced today, where are those particular projects, and how far have they spread across the rest of the country? How many other parts of Wales have looked at these winners and said, we could do that in other parts of the NHS too, and we have a plan to do that? And then in 12 months' time, depending on the verdict of the electorate and whoever the First Minister is, I'd be very interested to see what further progress has been made again. Because if we don't set ourselves that challenge of saying this is recognised as best practice, on a national stage we say this represents the best of the NHS in Wales, well, how do we then ensure that becomes the standard for NHS Wales? And I think that should always be our challenge, because innovation isn't supposed to be about individual practice. It's supposed to be about how you learn, how you innovate to understand what's in front of you, the challenge you have now and in the future, and to meet those in a way that isn't just about doing what we do now. And it's then about, well, how does that innovation not become innovation? And how does that become what each of us should expect of each other within the health service, and what we can expect from the public as well? So there's a challenge for all of us, and for ministers too, because I say this job is a privilege, and it is. And when the First Minister offered me the opportunity to be the Deputy Minister for Health, I said yes and thank you, and then thought about what I'd said yes and thank you to, and it was too late by then. But, you know, the attention that we get in this role isn't going to go away. Regardless of what happens in the next 10 months, regardless of the election result, the health service will always be a topic of conversation and concern. It is the best loved public service that we have. It is the most trusted public service that we have. And it is a service that everyone has an experience and an opinion about. And we shouldn't want people to stop caring about the NHS. Our challenge is, how do we have a more informed debate about what we do and why? And having events like this that are important for staff should also be important to the public. There should be a message to the public about what your NHS does with you and for you, and how it is serious about being an improving organisation, committed to our founding principles and values, but taking account of the world that we are in and the world we will live in the future. And that in itself should be a motivating message and experience for us, I think. Because when I walk out slowly toward a television camera and speak slowly and reasonably and say it's not as bad as you think, and actually we can be very proud of what the NHS does, that's part of the privilege. It goes with the territory. But if we don't do that, if we don't talk up for the 80-odd thousand people that work in the NHS and the 3 million-odd people that are reliant on this service, then we can't expect it to be a service people trust and value in the future. So it's our challenge to stand up for what all of us do, for what all of you do. Because fortunately for every man, woman and child in Wales, I don't really run the health service. I don't go into green uniform and become an emergency service paramedic running out in an ambulance. I don't put on a coat and operate on people, and you're very, very glad about that. And I'm not the person you'll see if you go to your health visitor clinic either. Yeah, unless it's me taking my boy, but that's different. So we don't deliver the service. We have the responsibility to lead, the responsibility to win arguments across government for our share of resources and how we do things with other parts of government, a responsibility to explain what the service does and why. But the service will not be successful on the back of what I say today or in the future. The NHS will only be successful in the future because of what people in this room do with the public. And that in itself, I think, is not me passing the buck. That is me recognising all that you do. The experience that you have, the quality and the commitment that you have is what makes the NHS something we can all still be incredibly proud of. And I can honestly say I'm very proud to be one of your ministers. It's a real privilege to stand up and to recognise all the people in this room, the excellence and the quality that you deliver, and your colleagues who are doing that in their day jobs today and tonight. But I can honestly say it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be one of your ministers. And I look forward to seeing in 6 months and in a year's time how the excellence that you recognise and quite rightly celebrate today is becoming more and more a standard part of what the NHS in Wales does each and every day. Many thanks.